Okay, so this week we begin the Torah portion with the Torah enumerating the years of Sara. Torah says these are. Aaron, can I see this Chumash?
Your book.
This one.
Oh, I didn't know.
All right, thank you, Abraham. It says these Vayu Chayei Sara, and this is the life of Sara. The Torah enumerates Meya Shana, she had 100 years, Esrim Shana, 20 years, Sheva Shana, and 7 years. Shnei Chayei Sara, these are the years of the life of Sara. And Rashi comments on this verse, and Rashi says that when she was 20 years old, she was as beautiful as when she was 7 years old. And when she was 100 years old, she was like when she was 20 years old in without any sin. So, thank you very much. Just like when she was 20 years old, she was without sin. The same as also when she was 100 years old, she was without sin. Just like she was beautiful when she was 7 years old, so too she was beautiful when she was 20 years old. So then Rashi concludes, Shnei Chayei Sara, these are the years of the life of Sara. Rashi comments, Kulan Shavim L'Teva, all of them were equal in goodness. So on the surface, looking at Rashi is just telling you that her later years were as good as her earlier years. You would think when she gets older, so then she may succumb to losing her beauty or losing her spiritual beauty, making mistakes. So the Torah says no. When she was 20, she was like 7, and when she was 100, she was like 20. She didn't lose anything. But the problem is, the words of Rashi, taken at face value, also convey another point. When you say all of her years are equal, it doesn't only mean that her later years were as good as her earlier years. It also means that her earlier years were as good as her later years. That means that she didn't advance at all in her life. It means the same level she was at when she was born, she remained at that level until she passed away. She didn't ascend at all. But that can't be. We know that every Jew is commanded to go from strength to strength. It says in the Torah about tzaddikim, the righteous, ein lem menucha, they have no rest. They're always ascending higher and higher. So how can we say that all of her years are equal? And this would be a question just knowing that she's a righteous person, or knowing that she is, even knowing that she is Jewish, that she's meant to go higher and higher. That itself would tell you that she must have ascended, must have done something to go higher than the day she was born. But if you look at Sarah's life specifically, we look at details of her life, and we could see that there were dramatic changes in her life where she ascended remarkably. And yet the Torah says all of her years were equal. When Hashem told Avram, for example, leave your house, leave your birthplace, go to the land that I will show you, and I'll make you into a great nation, I will bless you, I'll make your name great, she went with him. Just like Avram Avinu ascended incredibly through that experience, Sarah, his partner in life, also ascended incredibly by that experience. And her name was even changed. I don't usually try to change someone's name. You usually keep people's name the same because your name has to do with your spiritual makeup. But Sarah's name was changed. Her name used to be Sarai. Sara means to dominate, to be a master of. So Avram said, she's my Sarah. But then she ascended to a higher level, and her name became Sarah, which means not only is she Avram's Sarah, Avram's force, power, energy, the life behind every great man is a great woman. Not only is she Avram's, but Sarah Alokil, she dominates everything. So clearly, she ascended by having her name changed. That's emblematic of a major change in her service of Hashem in her life. And yet the Torah says all of her years are equal, meaning that her later years are as good as her earlier years, which sounds like she hasn't changed at all. So how can we say that it's all equal when we know it wasn't equal? We know that she certainly ascended her life. Certainly she changed, she went higher. But what does this mean? And the truth is that the very fact that she didn't lose her beauty at the age of 20, and she was as beautiful as when she was 7, that itself tells you that she changed. Why? Because if obviously we're talking about a certain kind of beauty that she had when she was 7, and which normally at the age of 20 would change, she would lose that. Like a breastman's thinking about his children and his grandchildren and their different kinds of beauty at different ages. Fine. Upon him, but the point is that there's something that changes naturally at 20. In those days, we know Rivka married Yitzchak at 3, so they matured very young, but there's something about Sarah's ascent spiritually that affected her physical beauty. In other words, because she did change, because she ascended so much higher spiritually, therefore, even when natural circumstances called for a change in her, it didn't affect her. Because she ascended so high, and it even affected her physical life, therefore, there was no change in her beauty. Or let's look at the second example that Rashi says. When she was 100, she was like 20. Usually, when a person gets older, they make more mistakes. Or let's say it this way: the age of when you're culpable, when you're responsible for capital punishment in Jewish courts, is the age of 20. So that's when you become responsible. And yet, when she passed that age, and she's now responsible for her actions, yet she is completely free of all mistakes at the age of 100, just like when she entered her 20th year. But in order to maintain that equilibrium after the age of 20, that requires more energy. It requires more force. To stay the same at the age of 50, at the age of the way you were at the age of 20, requires a lot more force, a lot more power, a lot more energy, a lot more. You need to try a lot harder to be able to do that. So that trying a lot harder is a change, is something more, is something better. And yet the Torah says all of her years are equal when they can't be equal. In order for her to be the same, she must have not been. They couldn't have been equal. In order for her to maintain her spirituality at the age of 100, to be the same at the age of 20, she must have been trying so much harder at the age of 100 than she was at the age of 20. The kind of temptations, the kind of things going on, there must have, it's like when you see a consistency in someone, that really shows a lot of effort. Consistency doesn't come without effort. So the fact that she consistently maintained her beauty and her spirituality at any age she was in, that itself highlights how there was ascent in her spirituality that allowed her to be the same way. They say if you want your children to be as religious as you have to be more religious than your parents. Why? Because every generation descends a little bit. So you don't want your children to descend lower than you. You want them to be the same as you. But you descended from where your parents were, and naturally your children will descend lower than you. So if you want them to be 2 generations up, when they're 2 generations later, you got to go higher. You got to go yourself 2 generations up. You got to go to be as religious as your grandfather. If you want your children to be as religious as you. Anyway, so clearly Sara is ascending. Not only is she ascending a little bit, but the Torah says she was 100 years old. 100, and we know in the ethics of our fathers, it says that at the age of 100, a person is considered like he's died and he's not in the world anymore. But Chassidic explains that the word world means concealment. The age of 100 means the age of perfection. Where you've perfected, there are 10 soul powers, and each of the 10 soul powers is comprised of 10 other soul powers. So the idea of being 100 years old means that someone has perfected, elevated all of their 100 soul powers, all the details of their 10 soul powers, so that they have 100 complete divine energies that are in the right place. There are 10 times 10. So the word world, concealment, there is no concealment, because a person has perfected their entire, like you have, Ramon, you're a perfect guy, right?
Yeah.
Of course. So because a person has reached the age of perfection, the world is no longer concealment. So when Sarah turned 100, certainly she was on a higher level. When Sarah passes away, how did she pass away? When she heard that her son was almost sacrificed, and he wasn't, that caused her soul to leave her body. So whether it was however you understand that, it was something that she was elevated by that experience. She reached a higher level, and that's why her soul left her body. It was something that brought her to a higher place. I mean, the Alter Rebbe says about every tzaddik, and the day of their passing, all of their efforts they do throughout their lifetime reach their climax, reach their highest point the day of passing. The Alter Rebbe says, "Kol ma'asav terasiv avadaseh, sha'av kol mechayav," all the deeds, all the Torah, and all the service of Hashem that a person has done throughout his life, on the day of their passing, and every year, the anniversary of their passing, it ascends to a higher place, and it channels salvation, but it's a channel salvation in this earth through their higher salvation. So if Sara has passed away at the age of 127 years, certainly there is a major elevation that happened from the day of her passing. So how could we say all of her years are equal? It can't be all equal. The fact that her later years are like her earlier years, okay. But how could we say her earlier years, the fact that her earlier years are like her later years, fine, she maintained her goodness. But how could we say that she didn't ascend higher? We know she ascended higher. So the answer is this. The answer is two parts. Part number one goes like this. Our sages say, Ani levresi l'sham sheskein. I was not created for any other reason but to serve my master. Ani lo nevresi el l'sham sheskein. There's no other reason I'm here. The only reason I'm here is to serve my master. There are actually two different versions of that phrase. One version is, I wasn't created but to serve my master, or I was created to serve my master. Amel Tzibol Shalom, Chassidic mentor in Yeshiva in Morristown, he once explained this to me. He said, I was created to serve my master means I have a hand. What's the purpose of my hand? To put on film. I was created to serve my master. The reason why I have a hand to put on film. I was not created but to serve my master. It goes like this. There's a mitzvah of film. Because there's a mitzvah of film, that's why I have a hand. In other words, to begin with, the whole identity, the whole meaning of us as human beings is to serve Hashem. That's what we're here. So Sara served Hashem. Hashem doesn't ask us to do more than we can. Hashem only asks us to do what we can. So all of her years are equal because every day she gave her all. The opportunities that she had in different stages of her life were different. But every stage of her life, she gave it her all. She served Hashem with what she had. The Rebbe once wrote to someone how when a person uses the resources Hashem gives them, so Hashem adds and gives them more resources. So Sara was given more resources. Sara was able to influence the whole world. But as far as she was concerned, personally, her life was always the same in the sense that she was always giving it her all. She was always trying to serve Hashem. The Mendel Futafas, when he was in prison, he was talking to other inmates, and one of the other inmates asked her, Mendel, you always seem so happy, so content. How could you be so content? I heard yesterday, by the way, that someone asked the Rebbe this question. How come that Mendel was so happy when he was in prison? Mendel used to say how happy he was in prison. And the Rebbe responded, but don't you understand? The Rebbe Rashab and the Friedrich Rebbe were with him. So that's what the Rebbe told someone. That's what I heard. But I read yesterday in this Sefer Yaakov Spur. But Mendel said the following. Mendel said that before I was in prison, I'm the same as when I am now in prison. Then what do you guys do before you were in prison? I was a doctor, I was a lawyer, I was a dentist, I was an accountant, and now you don't have that. Mendel said before I was in prison, I was serving Hashem. Now I'm also serving Hashem. So it's the same. My life hasn't changed. That's the meaning of all her years being equal, that all of her life she served Hashem with what she had. That's the first part. But that doesn't really satisfy us because according to this, her deeds were the same. She functioned in the same way. But the Torah doesn't say it that way. The Torah doesn't say all of her deeds were the same. The Torah says her years were the same. That means that the experiences were the same. Not just that she performed at 100% at every stage of her life. She never let mediocrity to creep in, but she gave it her all. It means more. The Torah says that her years were the same, which means the details of her life were all the same. And that brings us back to our original question. If you can't say the details of her life are the same, because she must have descended, must have gone higher. How can you say they're all the same? If we're talking about her giving her all, then you're right. But the Torah doesn't say that. The Torah says her years were all the same for goodness. Her years means that whatever she was doing that year was the same as the year before. How can you say a child? How can you say the child's the same in second grade as in first grade? How can you say the same in high school as it was in elementary school, the same in college? There's change. How can you say it's all the same? It's not just about how much she's doing, she's giving her all. The Torah is saying that her experience is the same. The details are the same. So the answer is this.
Right.
Sara served Hashem every day of her life. But every day of her life wasn't just a day that she served Hashem on that day. Every day of her life, she was also preparing for the next one. Every day of her life brought her to the next step. Let's go back to that analogy of first grade and elementary school and high school and college. In order for the child to be able to go to a high school, he has to have first elementary school. So elementary school is a preparation to high school. So because Sarah's life was every step of her life brought her to the next step, so her last day of her life and her first day of her life are all equal in the sense that there's a continuum of ascent throughout her life. There's things she's doing every day that are connected to the next day and the next year and the next. There's a place she's reaching on Sunday that allows her to do something different on Monday. It's because of what she did on Sunday she could do what she did on Monday. So let's talk about ourselves for a second. About a week, you know that certain weeks go by, and the Shabbos is different because the whole week was different. The week was in a higher level. You served Hashem in a higher level that week, so the Shabbos was in a higher level. You're building up your whole week and getting to a Shabbos. Conversely, the week is a little bit roller coaster-ish. Then the Shabbos isn't the same. The Sarah's last day of her life flowed seamlessly from her first day of her life because all of the days of her life allowed her to reach a higher level. And conversely, another thing, second thing, she also reaching a higher level of life, a higher level of serving Hashem, she elevated the previous earlier parts of her life. I think what that means is that you don't need to do teshuvah for things that you do now that are mediocre compared to where you reach tomorrow. Because how could you possibly do what you can't do today? In other words, if I'm only able to serve Hashem on one level, let's say I'm only able to physically put on film. I don't know. I never learned the meaning of film. No one ever taught it to me. I never had an opportunity to learn the meaning of film. And now tomorrow, someone teaches me the meaning of film. So do I need to do teshuvah for the day before? So Sara did. Maybe you're not required halachically to do teshuvah. Wasn't your fault. But Sara elevated all the parts of her life. Sara also was able to reach back in time and to question her previous behavior and elevate those previous experiences. It's perhaps a little hard to relate to because what mistake is she doing in the previous time when she wasn't able to reach a high level? But let's bring it to ourselves. And we know there are mistakes made, and we're able today to elevate mistakes of a previous day, a previous week, previous year, previous decade. We're able to look back there and turn to Hashem and ask Hashem for forgiveness, and to use that moment of time where we have fallen as a springboard for growth. I could think back about that moment of failure, and I could ask myself, and I could challenge myself and say, realize that the distance that brought me, and therefore, and mistakes, as it says in Tanya, are higher than time. I mean, every that mistake is higher than time. The blemish is higher than time, and therefore, actually, the author says in Tanya, chapter 30, that sometimes a person feels a dead sensitivity in their heart. They feel so insensitive. Why they feel insensitive in their heart? The author says it's because it's possible that Hashem wants to bring that person to a higher level of teshuvah, although he's done teshuva for his sins, but let's say it this way: you have a garment, and the garment is a dusty garment, and there's a stain on the garment, so you don't notice the stain. But once you clean the garment, then the stain is noticeable. And so similarly with the soul, once the soul has experienced a higher level of serving Hashem, so what was previously not considered a stain is now considered a stain. It's possible that then it wasn't, you need to do tshuva for it. But today Hashem wants to bring you to a higher level, and that's why you suddenly feel this insensitivity in your heart. Hashem wants to bring you higher, Hashem wants to bring you deeper. Also, the Alter Rebbe says that the tshuva is relative, meaning what you consider tshuva another stage of your life is not considered tshuva where you are now. In other words, you know now, because of what you've learned about Hashem, what tshuva really means. Let's say, for example, previous Rebbe, when he visited Rebbe Rashab after Yom Kippur, he asked Rebbe Rashab, what do we do now? Rebbe Rashab said, now you have to start doing teshuva. Because you've experienced Yom Kippur, because you see what it means to be close to Hashem, you realize now how much you really need to do. So the previous Rebbe was told by Rebbe Rashab, now you have to start doing teshuva. Now you begin doing teshuva. Why do you begin? Because looking at things from where you are now, you realize how much more you need to do, although the whole Elul you're doing teshuva. But reaching this level of Yom Kippur, you understand, wow, I need to do so much more. This needs to be in a whole higher level. Doesn't mean that there's a regret in what you're doing, but that you feel a distance in what you've done before, and you want to bring it back. So that feeling elevates the previous time. It elevates the mitzvahs that were done. I'm telling you, can I say something off color, Dr. Bressman? Of course, you know I'm an off color guy. Why not? Chaim. Someone once asked Mendel Futafas. He said, Mendel, I'm afraid if I dance in Simchas Torah, I may oversleep the next day and miss the time for saying Shema. Don't try this at home, folks. But Mendel said to him, dance on Simchas Torah. And if you oversleep tomorrow and you don't say Shema, the Shema that you won't say will be an atonement for all the Shema's that you've said. In other words, it's possible, although a mitzvah is a mitzvah, you should always do a mitzvah, never ask yourself, am I doing it for the right reasons, the wrong reasons? But nevertheless, it's possible that a mitzvah can contribute to your arrogance. Mendel was saying to this guy, when you miss that Shema and you feel bad about it, that will hopefully atone for the arrogance that you've accumulated for all the times you said Shema. Okay, so that's a little more of a sophisticated Chassidic twist to the idea, but be as it may, the idea we learn from Sara is we're able to elevate our past. We're able to lift up our past. Not just to that are present, preparation for the future, but also that we're able to look now in the future where we are and to elevate what happened in the past. But the question is this: if I am able to always elevate the past, then why do I need to work today? Why do I need to work today? Because I'm always able to elevate the past. So I'll want to work so hard today. Tomorrow I'll work harder, and I'll elevate things tomorrow. Why do I have to work hard now when I'll have tomorrow I can elevate today tomorrow? The answer is, in order to be tomorrow where you need to be, to elevate today to the level of tomorrow, you have to work today. In other words, you can't get your tomorrow won't be in the same place it's supposed to be if you don't serve Hashem today. So think about Yom Kippur for a second. If you're not going to have Yom Kippur, if you're going to skip the Yom Kippur, then the day after Yom Kippur, you're not going to be able to elevate things the way they're supposed to be, because Yom Kippur was meant to bring you to a different place. And now you're serving Hashem after Yom Kippur is supposed to be on a higher level. But if you never had the Yom Kippur, then the day after Yom Kippur will be like the day before Yom Kippur, and you're missing something. You won't be able to elevate things where they need to be. Every day we prepare for the next day, and therefore the next day is on a higher level the day before. And now I can do teshuvah tomorrow and elevate today to be on the level of tomorrow. But tomorrow will only be the level of tomorrow if today is the level of today. Anyways, the main thing is that we should have takakun shavon l'teva, the goodness of the coming Mashiach. As soon as the coming Mashiach, when the Mashiach will come, will be elevation of all the Torah mitzvahs that were done throughout history, all the mistakes done throughout history, and we'll feel good, feel really good. Mashiach comes. People think Mashiach comes is going to be terrible, but the Rebbe said that we're such good as Mashiach comes. We'll regret our mistakes, of course. Mashiach comes, but the main thing is we'll feel such a goodness and sweetness that other feelings will be negligible.
I